The following is a special presentation of Hearst Television. A primetime matter of fact, State of Addiction.
Tonight, we bring you an unprecedented television event, a live national conversation about the #1 health crisis in America, the opioid epidemic.
All year, we've brought you stories of countless lives lost, families devastated, communities struggling to respond. Everyone wondering how to stop our state of addiction.
A crisis hitting Alabama especially hard. So tonight we search for solutions and share stories of hope.
Joining us to tell these stories is our colleague and host of Matter of Fact, Soledad O'Brien at the Newseum in Washington, D.C.
We're glad to be with all of you tonight and humbled by the task we've taken on. Consider this. Today, in our country, as many as 650,000 opioid prescriptions were dispensed. And sadly, today, as many as 175 Americans died from a drug overdose, whether opioids like heroin or fentanyl, or the new synthetic drugs emerging every day. Tonight, we hope to help the nation turn a corner. This broadcast reaches across 39 states with the potential to touch families in 21 million households. Our goal is to help create a national agenda for action. We'll be joined by medical experts and policymakers, people in positions to make change happen with your help. So let's start in a community desperate for change. Jessica Gomez reports from McDowell County, West Virginia, a state where one person dies every 10 hours from a drug overdose.
On a Sunday morning, this is where you'll find Pastor Martin West.
We need to know what the Word of God says.
Delivering a sermon to his rural McDowell County church.
And for have they come to yet, or are they still out?
During the week, he's Sheriff Martin West.
Because of the number of people that's dying, you know, it's a lot of pressure.
McDowell County. It was once called the billion-dollar coal field.
The streets were constantly lined with people. Had 3 theaters here. We had 3 hospitals here.
That was then. Most of the coal mining jobs left. And so did the people.
A lot of people that stayed, and you know, they tried to make it, and things just kept getting worse and worse. The drug problem started escalating.
The jobs that were left, injury-prone mining and manual labor, coupled with the emergence of powerful prescription pain medication. It created the perfect storm of addiction.
The worst part of it is watching them daily. Their life just drained from them.
Yvonne Church's son was prescribed the painkiller OxyContin after nearly cutting off his thumb in a construction accident. He was hooked. One November morning, she found him on her doorstep. She had tried everything.
When I found my son, there was a smile on his face. And it hurt. Because whatever this drug is that puts a smile on somebody's face when they're dying, what a hold it has on a person.
Stephen Kissinger, an addict in recovery, knows that hold she's talking about.
It becomes #1 in your life. You can't get out of bed the next morning unless you got one. You can't get up and go fix a cup of coffee if you ain't got one. It consumes your whole life. Nothing else matters.
So since the last time you were here...
Kissinger waited 3 months to get into Southern Highlands, one of only a couple of outpatient treatment centers in the county. There are funeral homes here, but no long-term rehabilitation facilities. Kissinger's brothers didn't make it. He's now worried about his kids.
It's a way of life for some of these children, that they see that their brother is an addict or their mom is an addict. So many children are removed from the homes and placed into foster care or for adoption.
When you sign in, you have to have your identification.
At Linda McKinney's food bank, she often sees grandparents raising grandchildren, their own children addicted, in jail, or dead. In the poorest county in the state, now nearly 50% of children don't live with a biological parent.
I just said, what's going on here? Where are these babies going to go? Who has the answer?
A community in crisis. Sheriff West finally had enough.
It's a McDowell County problem. The case should be tried in McDowell County.
With help from law firms in Charleston, Sheriff West spearheaded the county's lawsuit against 3 of the largest prescription drug distributors, claiming profit and greed motivated them to ignore laws requiring them to report suspicious orders. This while flooding county pharmacies with millions of pills, well in excess of what would ever legitimately be needed.
The little guy's not just going to back down. It's a little county. Not a lot of people there, but they're not just going to roll over and be a victim of these entities any longer.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for sharing that information with me.
Meantime, the state of West Virginia, which created a 24-hour hotline connecting addicts to the closest treatment options, is taking proposals on where to spend dollars it won from a similar lawsuit.
I've buried 3 out of 1 family.
Sheriff West, who's lost exact count of the number of funerals over which he's presided, says the help is not coming fast enough.
And they keep telling me we're forming more commissions. And I'm saying, well, people is dying now. We need help right now. Lord, it just wants to praise you.
Prayer. Sometimes it feels like his only option, and publicly calling out state lawmakers he says have failed his county.
When we were the billion-dollar coal fields, everyone stopped by for a handout. Now that we're in desperate need, we're being left out because no one in Charleston cares. God forgive the state of West Virginia, and God save the county of McDowell. Sheriff Martin West.
In McDowell County, for Matter of Fact, I'm Jessica Gomez.
Thank you, Jess. We invited the pharmaceutical distributors named in the lawsuits to participate in our show, but they declined. We did receive statements from some saying in general they believe the lawsuits are misguided because they're not the ones actually prescribing the drugs. Many people across the country are grieving the loss of a loved one and struggling with the stigma often associated with these deaths. So tonight, we're asking you to help us build a virtual wall of remembrance on social media. Use our hashtag, it's State of Addiction. Share a picture, a video, a story, a tribute to someone you want to remember for their life, not their struggle. And we hope if you have a story of hope, you'll post that as well.
There's something really wrong with my beautiful 21-year-old son dying.
What does it take to loosen the grip of these drugs on our children? And a reality-based discussion, how to get help for those who need it.
Right now, we have recovery experts answering your questions live on our Facebook page.
For the next hour, they'll offer insight and advice to your questions on the WVTM 13 Facebook page.
Welcome back to Matter of Fact, State of Addiction. If you've ever wondered if addiction is a choice or a chance, there's proof it can begin with a single pill. Researchers for the CDC found that of the people given a one-day opioid prescription, only a single day, 6% will get hooked. The number doubles when the prescription is for 8 days or more. A 30-day prescription pushes the risk even higher, with 30% of patients likely becoming addicted. So how do you effectively treat people once they're dependent? It's a question that will haunt one mother forever.
What sports did he play?
Snowboarding and skateboarding.
He really liked,
Push himself.
yeah, he liked the extreme.
Chris Yoder's love of extreme sports would be his downfall. He tore his meniscus snowboarding at age 15, which led to a series of knee surgeries and a battle with depression. Each time he was given opioids to kill the pain. A year later, his mother discovered he'd begun to use heroin. How many times was Chris in and out of rehab?
At least 6 times.
Desperate, his mother, Dee Dee Yoder, finally found something that seemed to work better than the expensive rehabilitation programs, a treatment that could break Chris free from his addiction. So he was on Vivitrol in 2016, you said?
Yes, the beginning of March.
March of 2016. Yeah. How long did he use Vivitrol successfully?
For a year.
For a full year, medication kept the now 21-year-old off of heroin. For the first time in 5 years, the medication he was taking, Vivitrol, repressed his craving for drugs.
They sit on the medicine shelves collecting dust. We are unable to get them to the patient.
Dr. Stephen Ross is the director of addiction psychiatry at Bellevue Hospital in New York.
Suboxone comes in a film version that goes on your tongue. It's frustrating because there's a lot of good treatments, but the vast majority of people never get them.
The Surgeon General estimates that only 1 in 10 substance abusers are getting any treatment at all, and just 1 in 4 of those are getting these life-saving medications.
You had psychologists, psychiatrists, rehab specialists in 6 different places. Did at any time any of them say, you know, there's evidence that taking drugs will help in kicking this addiction?
Well, actually, the doctor at his last rehab was the one that said, you know, we should get him on Vivitrol.
Dr. Yasmin Hurd is director of the Center for Addictive Disorders at Mount Sinai Medical Center and studies how drugs affect the brain.
Heroin abuse is a whole brain disorder. There are specific circuits that are more impaired, but it's a whole brain disorder. The opioid treatments, they interact with opioid receptors, so the person doesn't crave and need the heroin or other addictive drugs.
An estimated 40% of those on medication-assisted therapies will still relapse, but the rate of relapse in programs without drug therapy reaches as high as 90%.
Abstinence, 12-step programs, I mean, I think AA works for a lot of people, but for a teenager, they just don't get it. You know, they're just not there.
A year into his Vivitrol treatment, Chris moved to Florida for a new job and a fresh start. There, he found few doctors certified to administer the drug, and just one on his insurance. Chris missed his monthly shot.
So what happens if you don't get your shot of Vivitrol in a month?
Someone's on Vivitrol, they miss their shot, the breathing part of their brain has become sensitive to opiates again, they relapse. Their memory was to use however many bags, and then they die.
This gut-wrenching, too soon death of Chris Yoder.
20 days after missing his monthly dose, Chris relapsed and died of an apparent overdose.
I've tried so many other things, like the normal route of doctors, hospitals, therapies, therapists, rehabs, and none of them seem to be the right route. There's something really wrong with my beautiful 21-year-old son dying.
The responsibility of confronting the opioid epidemic falls in part on local health commissioners. And Dr. Lena Wen is the health commissioner for the City of Baltimore, an emergency room physician. Dr. Wen issued a blanket prescription for naloxone, the opioid antidote, to all residents of Baltimore. Nice to have you with us. Thank you for joining me. Why? Why a prescription for everyone for naloxone or Narcan?
I'm an emergency physician, and I've seen how someone who is overdosing and about to die will be walking and talking within seconds of getting Narcan. And it should not just be first responders who can save a life. In Baltimore, I issued this blanket prescription to 620,000 people. We've done over 25,000 trainings in 2 years, and as a result, everyday residents have saved the lives of over 1,200 of their fellow residents.
So that is reviving, but it's not really treatment. Are you approaching it from the wrong end, at the end of the spectrum, if you will?
We treat addiction the same way that we treat any other disease. For example, heart disease. It's important for us to focus on long-term treatment, and ideally we prevent someone from having heart disease in the first place. But if someone is dying from a heart attack right now, it's our job to save their lives right now. And if we don't give people naloxone to save their life today, there's no chance for a better tomorrow.
President Trump declared the opioid crisis a national emergency, but he actually hasn't signed the paperwork that would go to Congress that would release the funds. What would those funds do for you? How would that help?
So a federal declaration of emergency means resources, and we desperately need them. We're out of money for naloxone. We're having to ration this life-saving medication, and I have to decide every day who gets it and who does not. And we desperately need money for treatment as well. Across the country, only 1 in 10 people with the disease of addiction can get the help that they need. And in the ER, I have to tell patients to wait weeks or months to get the treatment that they desperately need.
Are you seeing any positive trend? I mean, 1 in 10, that's an insane number when you consider that we've been thinking about this crisis for 20 years.
And we would never find it acceptable for any other illness. We would never say, well, only 1 in 10 patients with cancer can get chemotherapy. The conversation is changing, but what is holding us back is stigma. Stigma kills, and we have to fight stigma with evidence and science.
Dr. Wen, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Still ahead, questions for the DEA.
Who are they investigating? How are they going after this?
Are they doing enough to stop the flow of drugs into the country?
If you have recovery questions, we want you to join our Facebook Live conversation on your second screen. Recovery experts Steve Moore of the Moore Institute, Danny Malloy with the Addiction Prevention Coalition, and Mark Lidvine of Recovery Organization of Support Specialists are answering questions live on the WVTM 13 Facebook page.
We're talking about solutions and guidelines in the medical community necessary to combat America's opioid addiction. We're going to pick up that conversation in just a moment. But first, I want to give a thanks to everyone who's helping us build our wall of remembrance online using the hashtag #StateOfAddiction. Tanya Bryant shares this with us. Willard Bryant Jr., you were the best little brother to Tonka and me, and son to our parents. We miss you. And Molly Carroll sent us this message. Erica Long was a beautiful, hilarious, intelligent young woman. Our family was robbed, and heroin was the thief. Thank you for sharing those. We want you to honor your loved ones or share a story of hope on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. Just use the hashtag #StateOfAddiction. So did health officials fail to recognize the scope of opioid addiction before it became an epidemic? We continue our conversation. Joined now by Dr. Kelly Clark. She's a president of the American Society of Addiction Medicine. And Dr. Andrew Kolodny. He's a co-director of the opioid policy research at the Heller School at Brandeis University. Nice to see both of you. Let's start with patients. And I mean, we've seen in our reporting that many are steered away from medically assisted treatments. Has that been your experience, and why would that be?
Yes, actually, most of the facilities in the country that are treating substance use disorders, and specifically opioid addiction, don't offer medication, maintenance medication, while their patients are inpatients, and often they don't allow it. Some of this is based on stigma, some is based on just their historical needs, but we're just continuing to do the things that don't work in this country instead of the things that do work.
The $64,000 question for me, Dr. Kolodny, always seems to be, how did health professionals miss this epidemic that was sort of blossoming right underneath them? Yesterday, I was in the ER with a friend who was in a cab accident, and so many times she was offered opioids, even though when they'd ask her about her pain, she'd say, yeah, it's a 5 on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst, almost aggressively. And it made me think maybe that explains why we are where we are.
That's absolutely right. The reason that the United States is experiencing a severe epidemic of opioid addiction is because the medical community has been overprescribing opioid pain medicine. And as the pain medicine prescribing went up, it led to parallel increases in addiction and overdose deaths. So this is an epidemic caused by the medical community writing too many opioid prescriptions.
And did the medical community just not realize what was happening, or who's ultimately at fault there?
The reason we started to overprescribe is that we were responding to a brilliant, multifaceted campaign launched by the manufacturers of opioid pain medicines. So doctors beginning in the 90s through the 2000s, we were hearing from just about every direction that if you're a compassionate, caring doctor, you'll understand that opioids are the right way to treat just about any complaint of pain. And we were told that the risk of addiction was very low. And of course, that wasn't true.
What works in prevention? I mean, one would think those scared straight kind of ads for kids would be effective. Are they?
Actually, they're not. We continue to do what doesn't work. So the scared straight, the educational programs where drugs will kill you, please don't do drugs, sending someone into the school to talk to them about the dangers.
None of that works?
No, actually, that increases the chance that kids use drugs.
Wow.
Similarly, going through a detox and a rehabilitation when people aren't leaving on maintenance medication actually increases the chance that they die than if they hadn't gone through those programs. We're doing what we know doesn't work instead of what we know does work. And the things that do work, there are community-based resiliency skill training. We have a whole plethora. We have a number of things we know work for prevention. We're not doing those. And we know that the medications are the most effective treatments, ongoing medication treatment for opioid addiction. And unfortunately, we still have too many treatment providers that don't even allow that treatment.
It's interesting feedback you get sometimes from people of color who will say to me, yeah, suddenly people are really compassionate in thinking about how to deal with this problem. It's an epidemic, when the bulk of the people who are victims are white, and that compassion wasn't there when you were talking about the crack epidemic or even the earlier heroin epidemic. Is that true?
It is true. During our last addiction epidemics, the heroin epidemic of the 1970s, the crack cocaine epidemic of the 1980s, what we got from policymakers was a message that we could potentially arrest our way out of this problem. We got a war on drugs, which contributed to mass incarceration. Today, what we're hearing from policymakers, even conservative Republican politicians, when they talk about this problem, they often begin by saying we can't arrest our way out of it. We didn't hear that back then. It's good that we're hearing it now. It's too bad we didn't hear it previously.
Dr. Kolodny, Dr. Clark, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Still ahead, he lost his son to a drug overdose. We'll meet a federal prosecutor who has a personal perspective on the challenges of taking down dealers.
And next, a closer look at how our state of addiction is affecting Alabama. No family is immune. That's why our recovery experts are answering questions, from the warning signs to treatment options. Join the live conversation on the WVTM 13 Facebook page. The opioid epidemic is a threat to all of Alabama.
We've said it before, and it's still true tonight. Alabama prescribes more opioids than any other state. Nearly 6 million prescriptions for pain pills.
That's 1 million more than the number of people living here. The high prescription rate is taking a toll. 282 people died of opioid-related overdoses in 2015.
Police are fighting to save lives from dealers selling prescription pills, including illegal opioids. What you see is 720 potentially fatal doses of fentanyl from a recent drug bust in Shelby County.
And from dealers to doctors' offices, authorities are going after people they believe are adding to our state of addiction. Jefferson County hired a 4th coroner to ease a backlog of autopsies because of the overdose spike. No need for a 5th, though. The coroner's office says the rapid rise of opioid overdoses a few years ago have dropped, but fentanyl deaths are up in what is sadly called the new normal.
The opioid epidemic's spiraling death toll is personal for Shelby County's medical examiner. WVTM 13's Mary O'Connell found out why.
Christmas Eve, 1998, at 6:15 in the morning, I got a call and said, your brother is dead from a drug overdose, and get up and go tell your parents.
A moment that sticks with Lina Evans every single day.
With addiction, you lose. You lose. There's no winning at all.
Evans remembers her brother, Dane Schumer, as the fun-loving man whose pain from a knee injury eventually led him to abuse OxyContin. His overdose death shocked the family.
I think of all the things that he missed out on, that he would have loved. He would have loved seeing and doing, and that's what hurt so bad.
Evans turned to medicine. She became a nurse, then the Shelby County coroner earlier this year. Evans hopes to shine a light on the opioid problem.
These aren't, people that are in the shadows lurking behind buildings and, buying drugs. And these are good people. These are everyday, our family, friends, and our neighbors.
Evans says there have been 25 opioid overdoses in Shelby County this year, stressing that treatment works. But people can't walk the road to recovery alone.
You are never alone. All you have to do is say, I need help. I need help. There is somebody that will help you. Call me, I will help you.
A coroner offering a life-saving message of compassion and hope. In Shelby County, Mary O'Connell, WVTM 13.
So what can be done? Governor Kay Ivey formed an opioid addiction council to investigate this crisis. The group of health experts, along with the Alabama Attorney General, met for the first time last week. Its first accomplishment, striking a deal for police to buy Narcan nose spray for a cheaper rate.
We wanted to make sure that we at least had an affordable option, one that was easily be usable by law enforcement, and that we could say that their lives matter very much and that we need to get that in their hands.
The governor wants to hear the group's life-saving solutions by December 31st.
Last spring, legislators failed to pass a tougher law for heroin and fentanyl dealers. WVTM 13's Marlene Martinez found out why another law to protect the youngest of victims is not seen as equal.
We would love for everybody who has an addiction to have enough self-motivation to check themselves into rehab. However, for some people, it just doesn't work that way.
Etowah County Sheriff's Office is a strong enforcer of Alabama's chemical endangerment law.
We want to help that woman stay clean, to be a positive, productive citizen in society, and to hopefully break the cycle of addiction for her child.
Here in Etowah County, the Sheriff's Office has arrested more than 50 women on chemical endangerment charges just this year alone. The state passed the chemical endangerment law in 2006, reportedly with a focus of protecting children from the increasing number of meth labs. But some healthcare experts say prosecutors have misconstrued the law to penalize pregnant women.
So why would you criminalize or punish someone who's seeking help?
Dr. Willie Parker runs abortion clinics in Huntsville and Tuscaloosa. He says Alabama's chemical endangerment law discourages pregnant women with substance abuse addiction from seeking health care.
Yes, let's catch criminals. Let's catch people who are harming people. But let's not penalize women for seeking help for themselves.
If convicted, a pregnant woman faces up to 10 years in prison. But the Sheriff's Office says that felony charge can be wiped from her record if she completes rehab. They say treatment is the office's priority, not jail time.
We have women coming back to us after they've completed the program to thank us.
But Parker says jail time should be off the table altogether.
If you really want to look out for a baby, you can't look out for a baby by penalizing its mother.
For WVTM 13, I'm Marlene Martinez reporting.
Jails aren't free of drugs. The Etowah County Sheriff showed us the creative ways inmates are smuggling them in. This includes receiving mail with drugs taped to the back of stamps or melted onto letters, cards, and envelopes. The sheriff says his officers find up to 30 pieces of drug-laced mail a day.
Getting help while waiting for help, the new recovery service in Birmingham. And right now, recovery experts are answering your questions live on the WVTM 13 Facebook page. They'll be with us until 10 o'clock.
Still ahead from Washington, we create a national agenda for action. Policymakers put their solutions on the table.
Pain relievers are the most widely abused opioids. More than half the time in Alabama, addicts get prescription drugs from friends or family for free.
Teenagers also report pills are easier to buy without a prescription than beer. Opioids are also more readily available than heroin, but heroin is cheaper. And even the healers get hooked.
WVTM 13's Mary O'Connell looks at the problem of drug-addicted doctors and the help they're finding in Birmingham.
When you're using drugs and abusing drugs as a person, no degree you have confers control over having an addiction.
The opioid epidemic knowing no boundaries, a reality one physician knows personally.
People are dying literally every day. The thought is never far from my mind that it could easily have been me.
Sarah, who asked us not to use her real name, is an anesthesiologist. Sarah got hooked on opioids after using pain medication following several surgeries.
It was very easy to get more because as a doctor I knew what to say and what not to say. Sometimes I would just go to the ER and they'd see my history and give me whatever I wanted because they figured I was in terrible pain, but I wasn't. I just wanted the drugs.
Sarah's behavior changed. Her work noticed, which led her to treatment at Bradford Health Services in Alabama.
About 35% have issues with opiate medications.
Bradford's medical director has evaluated nearly 5,000 doctors and nurses from across the country, all who needed help.
As long as the person follows treatment recommendations and then has monitoring when they get out to make sure that they remain safe to practice and that their abstinence, then there are no repercussions.
For Sarah, looking past the shame and the fear saved her life and her job.
The reason that I still have my job and my license is because I went and got help voluntarily. There's no one who can't get better.
And getting better is possible. Mary O'Connell, WVTM 13.
So who's to blame for the opioid epidemic? The city of Birmingham points the finger in filing a lawsuit against 3 of the country's largest drug distributors. The federal suit claims the companies have turned a blind eye to suspicious shipments of opioids, while at the same time making big bucks from illegal orders.
Addicts with no place to turn now have a safe and sober place to go. WVTM 13's Larissa Scott on where people can find support when they feel most vulnerable.
We're in the midst of a major opioid epidemic.
And the newly formed Recovery Organization of Support Specialists, or ROSS, was created for that very purpose.
ROSS is doing our part to fight this thing and show people above all that we do recover.
The organization is the first of its kind in Alabama.
What we're doing is reaching the people who fall through the cracks, those who do not necessarily want to go through treatment.
Or those waiting for space in a treatment facility.
Really all you can go to in this community is meetings and things like that.
We had lost hope out there, thought that I was gonna die using.
ROSS offers support groups for both recovering addicts and families.
We have a story to tell through our lived experience to give people hope.
Sandra Lanier is a long-term recovering addict. ROSS has changed her life.
It affords me the opportunity to not want to go back out there.
The center provides her a safe place to go and also mentor.
It's awesome to be able to have lived this lifestyle and be able to talk about it today.
Navigating recovery through support, education, and hope. In Birmingham, Larissa Scott, WVTM 13.
ROSS will host an open house Thursday, September 14th from 3 to 6 p.m. at its location in Summit Square. That's on 281 West Valley Avenue in Homewood. Also, mark your calendar for Saturday, September 23rd for the Birmingham Recovery Walk at Railroad Park. WVTM 13's Marley Martinez will MC the walk to start at 5 p.m. until 9 p.m.
Again, we have recovery experts answering questions. Go to the WVTM 13 Facebook page and take advantage of their insight on the warning signs and recovery and hope. Let's now get you back to the museum in Washington, D.C. with our State of Addiction special host, Soledad O'Brien.
Next, drug cartels and dealers, several steps ahead of law enforcement.
Our labs are seeing 2 or 3 new substances a month.
Can we get ahead of the bad guys?
Rush the patient to the hospital, and this scene is repeated over and over each day.
Police, search warrant!
Police say the suspect made all of the deals out of his house, where he lives with his 3 kids.
That's a little disturbing.
Across the country, a rush to save lives and cut off an influx of illicit drugs. Nearly all heroin is smuggled into the United States, most synthetic drugs like fentanyl shipped from China. Now, dealers are making fentanyl here in the United States. So take a look at this. Boxes that hold a key ingredient to make fentanyl. Seized from a Massachusetts storage unit this summer, 110 pounds of the ingredient is enough to make 19 million fentanyl tablets worth more than $500 million. Nicole Killian has our report on the struggle to cut off the supply.
I first got involved when I was a first-year member of Congress, and a constituent came to see me who lived near me back home, and her son had just died of an overdose.
A decades-long battle against opioid addiction is personal for Ohio Senator Rob Portman.
Almost every week, I find out about somebody.
His state, number 4 in the nation for drug overdose deaths, according to the Centers for Disease Control.
Ohio is harder hit than most states, but every single city, every single state in this country has been hit.
Enter the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, the combat force in the nation's war against drugs.
What keeps you up at night?
Lots of things keep me up at night.
Chuck Rosenberg is the acting administrator.
We have to enforce the law, which means stopping the biggest and most dangerous cartels and the biggest and most dangerous street gangs. We also have to regulate our piece of the industry, and we have to reduce demand.
But with only 4,600 special agents, it's a challenge. Compare that number to the nearly 36,000 uniformed members of the New York City Police Department.
The notion that the DEA alone by itself is going to be able to stop all of this is fanciful. We need help.
In July, the agency shut down 2 major online black market opioid sellers, but they know new sources will emerge.
Do you think they have enough resources to do their job?
Well, we'll see.
Congressman Greg Walden chairs the House Energy and Commerce Committee. It's investigating whether the agency failed to prosecute questionable manufacturers, pharmacies, and doctors.
Who are they investigating? How are they going after this? How do we have these I'll call them pill mills, where you've got pill dumping going on in a community? What are they doing to go after something like that?
Hey, guys.
As for Senator Portman, he's pushing a bill that requires the Postal Service to better monitor overseas packages, a massive pipeline for potent synthetic drugs.
Most of that's coming from China. We know they use the U.S. mail system.
He's hoping for passage by year-end, despite competing priorities like disaster relief and tax and immigration reform.
This is a true emergency, but it doesn't mean that we can't walk and chew gum at the same time. I'm not going to give up.
In Washington, I'm Nicole Killian.
The tough job of prosecuting drug offenders falls to federal prosecutors like Bruce Brandler. He's a U.S. attorney for the Middle District of Pennsylvania. He also lost his son, Eric, to a heroin overdose about 10 years ago. U.S. Attorney Bruce Brandler, nice to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
When you look at the numbers, as Nicole kind of laid them out for us in her piece, it feels as if the DEA is wildly overmatched in this fight. Are they?
I don't think the picture is as bleak as Chuck has painted. There are hundreds and thousands of dedicated and hardworking law enforcement agents fighting this battle every day in the trenches, and they do an effective and good job of incarcerating drug dealers. So, of course, we could use more resources. We could use more prosecutors. Chuck could use more DEA agents. But we are doing an effective job in incarcerating the people we do catch.
And the people that you're catching, are those folks who are essentially addicts, who are kind of getting caught up in the system?
Absolutely not. I think that's a real misperception out there. The people that we're prosecuting in federal court are violent criminals who are recidivists for the most part, who have been caught previously selling drugs and are selling high volumes of drugs. These are not low-level addicts who are just selling to support their own habits.
Can you arrest your way out of a problem as big as this epidemic essentially has become?
No, we all recognize in the law enforcement community that we can't arrest our way out of this problem. And that's why the Department of Justice has a 3-part strategy to combat the opioid epidemic. And it deals with prevention, it deals with enforcement, and it deals with treatment. So enforcement is obviously the most important part. We as prosecutors need to prosecute aggressively anybody that we catch, and we have a zero-tolerance policy for people that are caught dealing heroin.
We mentioned your son died about 10 years ago, but I know it was only in the last maybe year and a half that you started telling people. Has it changed at all how you think about prosecution?
I don't know that it's changed how I think about prosecution. There are many dedicated prosecutors out there who are doing exactly what I'm doing and fighting this battle on a day-to-day front, doing the best they can. I came out public with my situation because I wanted to raise public awareness and take away some of the stigma and shame that may be associated with the opioid addiction. Tell people that if it could happen to me as a federal prosecutor, it could basically happen to anybody.
It's a good message to share. Bruce Brandler, nice to have you. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Up next, we continue our conversations about fighting this epidemic. Can the government deliver the help that's needed? We're talking about ways to respond to America's opioid crisis. We're going to pick up that conversation in just a moment. But first, I want to thank everybody who's helping us build our online wall of remembrance using the hashtag State of Addiction. And here's a post that we wanted to share with you, a story of hope from Barb Bowen in Boston, the face of addiction in recovery. Recovery is possible. It's a great achievement, a beautiful life. That's a nice one to get to share. Everyone on our program tonight has been touched in some manner by the opioid crisis. So what should be the national response? Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson is a Republican. He's also chairman of the Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee. He lost a nephew to opioids. It's nice to have you, Senator. Thanks for being with us. So what should the government be doing, or what could the government do better right now to help people? Because there's so many. I'm sure you hear from them all the time from your state of Wisconsin.
Well, you know, we do spend about $30 billion per year on the war on drugs. About $14 billion of that is on treatment.
From my standpoint, there are three legs to the solution stool. You have supply and addiction, you have treatment, and you have reduction of demand. It'd be far better if we could reduce demand, if we could do as we've done, for example, with tobacco, where we really have dramatically reduced the demand for tobacco products. We need to do the exact same thing with drugs, but that'll take multi-years, probably multi-decades, public relations, education campaign, just a cultural shift. There's nothing glamorous about getting addicted to drugs and dying in squalor and destroying your family's life, your parents, your siblings, your grandparents' life. There's nothing good about that. We need to drum that into our young people's.
The president has not signed. He said he wanted to call it a state of emergency, the opioid crisis, but he actually has to sign and then send off to Congress that declaration. But do you think there's any indication that he won't? Do you expect that he will?
Soledad, it is a state of emergency. You don't have to have a president sign that.
It releases funds, though, realistically, right?
We do spend plenty of money. We need to spend it smarter. And we've got to focus on what actually does work. You had earlier guests on talking about what works and what doesn't work. Let's do more and more research. Let's find out what does work. In business, that's exactly the approach you use. What is the best practice? And you keep pushing the envelope. You keep, trying to find better and better treatments, better and better messages to reduce demand.
Do you think insurance companies could do more? Often you'll hear from people who are just overwhelmed by the fact that they can't get their kid in rehab any kind of insurance coverage, or insurance only covers certain things, and so that sort of blocks their ability to have flexibility in treatments even.
I think insurance companies really, again, they're money-making organizations. I think they could actually push the best practices, help the research, fund it. And then it would save them money, but it also, I think, do far better for the American public if we actually had treatments that worked.
It's really true. What do you tell to not just your constituents, but people in general? I mean, it's heartbreaking when you see on this wall of remembrance just so many people, and the victims are so young across the board.
Oftentimes we have middle school and high school students come visit us in our Senate office, or I go to those schools. Ever since I've gotten involved in this, ever since I've talked to parents who've lost their beautiful sons and daughters, there's never a group of children that I don't talk to. And always, number of messages, but I always say, don't do drugs. Now, a lot of times you get snickers, then I tell them about my nephew, I tell them about these parents whose lives have been ruined. I say, if you care anything about your parents or your brothers and sisters or your grandparents, if you don't care about your own life, think about them, because you will ruin theirs by taking drugs. So just don't do drugs.
Very difficult conversation. Senator Ron Johnson, nice to have you with us tonight. Appreciate it.
Thanks for doing this.
And thanks to all of you who joined us this evening to help us create a national agenda to combat the opioid crisis. As we close, we want to take some time to remember some members of our own Hearst Television family who have lost loved ones to the opioid epidemic. We recognize the loss so many of you have at home and that you face because we have experienced it ourselves. Our colleagues, and really their openness and their courage throughout this crisis, have served as an inspiration for our efforts tonight. And we'd like you to know that our thoughts are with them and with all of you. From the museum in Washington, D.C., I'm Soledad O'Brien.
We also want to thank you for spending part of your evening with us and joining the Facebook Live conversation.
WVTM 13 News at 10 is next.